Hi everyone, thank you very much for stopping by and returning to the old world. Today we're turning our attention to the battalion box set for the Dwarven Mountain Holds. We're asking the question, is it worth it? Post errata for someone that's new to the game or new to this particular faction. As always, let's start by having a look at what you get inside the box. So for 110 of your British pounds, you get 66 models, assuming you're buying them from Games Workshop Direct, of course. Usual conditions of being able to get them cheaper from third-party retailers, etc., obviously apply. So what do you get? You get 32 Dwarf Warriors, 32 Dwarf Thunderers, which can also, it's noted, be built as quarrelers, and 2 Gyroopters. Here's the question, is it any good? Let's start with the warriors. So Dwarf Warriors, let's face it, they can be used to be Dwarf Warriors. You could equally use them to represent Dwarf Longbeards. They can be equipped with hand weapon and shield or double-handed weapons, and there's enough command options to split this into 2 separate units. Now, infantry post errata have seen some really good buffs. They're fighting in a second rank. The ability to switch out between weapons during ongoing combat is really useful for them. So you can start with your hand weapon shield, absorb some charges, then switch to your great weapons to do some damage. Let's face it, you're never going to be striking first with dwarves anyway. You've also got access to things like the shield wall and stubborn rules, which combo really nicely to give you a unit that's just not going anywhere fast. And yes, you might not want Dwarf Warriors. I think you almost certainly are going to be wanting Longbeards dotted around your army, obviously depending on whether you're using the Army of Infamy or the Grand Composition forces. I do think 32 warriors is a little bit of a strange number. I don't think you're going to want that many in a unit, but likewise you're not going to be wanting 16, 17 in a unit. So it's not going to split nicely into 2, and it's too many just for the one. So I think you're going to be left over with some spare bits, whether you want to convert them, of course, or if you are buying a second box, I suppose it allows you 2 big blocks, maybe even 3 big blocks of dwarf infantry. That may well be overkill, however, because then you're plundering points away from things like hammerers, for example, which I think are also going to be hot ticket items for a lot of players. Suffice to say, however, Dwarf Warriors definitely have play. I just have a bit of a feeling that 32 is a little bit too many of them, certainly for this style of box. Let's now turn our attention to the Thunderers / Quarrelers. So these with negligible work can of course be turned into Rangers. Rangers are pretty much an ever-present when it comes to a lot of dwarf armies, as are dwarf Quarrelers, which are the crossbow-armed dwarves. My gut feeling is for a unit that's going to sit on the back, sit on your home objective in the right kind of mission, babysit your baggage train, big block of missile troops that are tough, that can come with great weapons and all that sort of stuff, they're going to be a bit of a problem for your opponent. And we're moving away in the dwarf army for missile forces being based around the Trollhammer torpedo, because that has received quite significant downgrade. So a big block of quarrelers using their 30-inch range to harass people from the back of the board and generally be a bit of a nuisance, I can see that getting a little bit of play. Again, with 32, that is a lot, but these models, they can be Thunderers, they can be Quarrelers. You could use them as Rangers you could probably just even do a paint job to differentiate them from regular foot troops. They're coming out of your course. They can hold objectives, score you points. I do think there's a reasonable amount to like there, even before you're looking at plinking a few wounds off here and there, and then being able to hold the ground quite effectively. Finally, we have 2 gyrocopters, which also can be built as gyro bombers. Now, pre-errata, one of the most effective units available to the Dwarves was a mass of gyrocopters. We've seen that through, Richie from Dwarf the Dark, playing for captaining no less Team England with his Dwarf force is mostly a mass of skirmishing gyrocopters. These are a proper pain. When the game was first being released and people were starting to play with the idea of Dwarves, an army that was basically just gyrocopters was being floated as a bit of a meme list. But actually it seems that it really is quite a powerful thing. Gyrocopters offer a lot of speed when it comes to a Dwarf army, something that they will struggle to do otherwise, particularly I think with things like movement spells being more difficult to cast if you are using the Anvil of Doom, or you're putting your guys into march column and hoping to get them up the board without them getting clobbered while they're in a weak formation. Now, with infantry getting the buffs and with the importance of taking objectives and needing core stuff to do that, mobile core stuff to grab objectives, I don't think we're going to see quite as many gyrocopters on the table at the top level as we have done previously. However, there's still very much a part for them to play. Pace is going to be important, getting around the board, and if you're going second in a game with Dominion, you can really nip in, grab those table quarters, and score yourselves some late points. They're also going to be helpful for clearing enemy forces, harassment, getting your enemy turned around in ways that you just can't really do with a block of infantry marching up the table. For the errata, I think I was definitely a little bit down on this battalion box set. It's decent, but it didn't make 100% sense. I think to an extent that still holds true when we're looking at the number of Dwarf Warriors and Thunderers in this box. Just to come back to that, I think that number of models doesn't really lend itself to 2 units that are going to be super effective. And it also doesn't lend itself to 1 unit because there's just too many models here. So you're buying models that I think you'll struggle to use. And I suspect you're probably not going to want 2 of these boxes because I think you're going to be wanting to spend the rest of your points going in slightly different directions. Having said that, I think this box set has improved in value because, infantry are that much better, and I am kind of expecting Dwarves to move up the rankings a little bit and become a tad more effective, winning a better proportion of their games. So I think as a new player, definitely one to consider if you're jumping into Dwarves. This one will set you up, I think. So that's it from me. All that remains for me to say is thank you very much for listening. I hope you found this video useful. If you have enjoyed it, and perhaps the rest of this series looking at battalion box sets and the wider hundreds of videos I've done, do consider a like and subscribe. It's the best way of keeping tabs on when new content drops, and of course is an absolutely free way of supporting the channel. Once again, thank you very much for listening. I am Return to the Old World. Have a great day.